Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's GTA 5 video, I'm going to be telling you guys about 20 things you need to know about the brand new Pegassi Tezeract Super Car before you even consider buying it in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now, before we jump into today's video, I want to let you know that I'm doing a $3.5 million shark card giveaway. As you'll learn in a little bit, this will cover the price of not only the new Tezeract, but also the Vapid Ellie, which I'll be talking about in a later video. So it's $3.5 million. It's going on my Twitter account, and I'm announcing the winner on Friday. So jump into that, and you could be walking away $3.5 million richer with the ability to fund both of the new cars that were released today. Anyways, let's jump into the Pegassi Tezeract, and the first thing you're going to notice about this car, it's expensive. $2,825,000. It actually makes it the most expensive supercar that doesn't have a weapon or a rocket strapped to the back of it. So that is insane. Up until that point, that crown belonged to the X80 Proto, but that has been broken. We are inching that much closer to the $3 million supercar mark, again, without rockets or weapons. Now, in case you're curious what this weird specimen of a car is based off of, it's actually based off of the Lamborghini Terzo Millennio, which is Lamborghini's newest hypercar, and I don't even know if this car is like out in production yet, but they announced it, I believe, earlier last year, and this car is just insane at how crazy it is. All right, so now that you've got the Tezeract, this is actually what it looks like in your garage. And you can see it's a pretty menacing looking car, to say the least. Now, what I would do right now is I would show you, or I would let you take a listen to the startup sound. But one thing you need to know about this vehicle is it's 100% electric, which means it makes zero noise on the road and when you're starting it up. So there's no need for me to do that, but that is something you need to be aware about of this car, because that's something that I know some people don't really like. They like to hear the rumble and the sound of an engine, and if that's for you, you're not going to like this car because it is completely silent when you're driving it, and it's totally silent when you end up driving it and starting it up as well. Anyways, let's move this into the Los Santos custom shop. And the first thing you're going to notice about this car is some things might actually be missing. So there's no exhaust options, there's no transmission, and there's no turbo. And that is because it is an electric car. Obviously, there's no exhaust because it's electric. There's no transmission because it's an electric motor. And there's no turbocharger because it's an electric motor too. So even though it only says 14 customization options, which you might see at first and say, ew, that's not a lot, it's because a lot of those things that don't come on electric cars are not there. So have no fear. This car still has a lot of customization, a lot of unique customization as well that I think is really cool. The first that's really cool is one of the chassis upgrades. So the shocks on this car are actually visible, which is, I think, is a pretty cool design. And there's two designs that you might think are pretty similar: secondary shocks and lit shocks, which at first glance you say, those are the same, what's the difference? Well, lit shocks will actually glow in the dark at night, which I'll show you guys a little bit later. It's really cool. And honestly, it's only a $400 difference. So if you're going to do the secondary shocks, you might as well do the lit ones because they look totally awesome. So I'm a big fan of that. The next thing about this car that's kind of a weird quirk, I'm not a huge fan of it, is some of the liveries. Now, the liveries are really awesome. I actually really like them. But the problem with some of them is they have cool colors that you can't match. So for example, this Globe oil livery right here has a really bright orange. Unfortunately, there's no orange in the game that allows you to match that color. There's another livery as well called Homogena that has this really bright red on there. Unfortunately, there's not a single red color in the game that allows you to match that, which is really frustrating if that's something you'd like to do. I don't know why Rockstar add these liveries with these unobtainable colors, because it really makes it hard to mix and match if that's sort of the thing you're going for. Other than that, the liveries are really cool. My personal favorite is this Mind Mock one right here, which is really simple, but I like the sort of back end of it where it's kind of got those like gradiental stripes. It's really cool. So let's talk about our respray options here, because they actually do a lot of little details. So the primary color obviously is going to impact the exterior of the car. That's it. That's the only thing it does. Now, the secondary color does a lot, and that's something we're going to have to talk about. So if you keep the stock rims, which I recommend you do, changing the secondary color will change the color on the interior of the rim, which is really cool. So I recommend keeping the stock rims, and if you change the secondary color, it will impact that. It will also impact all the secondary options you have selected, like bumpers and splitters and stuff like that. So that's pretty obvious. One thing that's not so obvious is the shocks. It's going to change the color of the shocks that you have, which I think is pretty cool. It's also going to change a little piece in the door sill. I'm not really sure what that's called, but it changes that color. And then sort of like the bar braces and engine piping, it changes that color as well. So there's a lot on the exterior that the secondary color actually does for this vehicle. So that makes it a really important choice. But we're not done there yet. The stitching on the inside of the car is also impacted by the secondary color. So that's something you need to keep in mind as well. Now, we'll be able to change more of the interior a little bit later on, but if you want to upgrade the stitching, well, that is done via the secondary color. And then as far as the trim color goes, that's going to change the dash, the inside of the seat, the door panels themselves. That's pretty obvious and pretty standard. You can pick whatever color you want to go with there. So the respray options are really awesome on this car. Now, getting to the spoiler, there's one spoiler in particular here that I don't think any other car has, and that is a split spoiler, where the spoilers are literally split. There's two spoilers on this car, which is insane. It's called split arrow spoiler, which I think is really cool. That one, the aggressor spoiler and the competition spoiler are all probably my favorite, but I think this car just has some really unique spoiler design. So I thought that that was pretty awesome. Now, something you don't want to overlook here is the window tint. So typically this wouldn't be all that exciting, but it's really unique on this car. When you change to light, dark, or limo, it actually has an impact on two things that I don't like. One of them being the front windshield. So this is a huge issue in first person because obviously it's way darker. It makes it totally hard to see out of. So it's kind of unfortunate because that dark look is amazing on this car, but seeing out in first person is really tough. And also on the back, how you can kind of see all like the piping and bars of the engine, that's covered up as well, which I really dislike because it's kind of cool to look at that from the back. So my personal recommendation here would be to stick with light smoke or none. That way you can still see out in first person, and you can also see the really cool design of this car on the back. Now, if we bring this vehicle outside, the first thing you're going to notice about this car is the wheels. If you decide to leave the stock wheels on, you'll notice that not only are they a different color, but they also glow. Just like the Tron suits, just like the Shitaro sports bike, the wheels on this car glow, which is really awesome. It kind of gives it this illuminating effect, and when you're driving really fast, the rim is just a complete blur, and all you can see is the color behind it, which is actually kind of cool. Now, if you want to spice things up even more on this car, the stock rim color can be changed. So in order to do that, you've got to go to the LSC, select a random wheel, select the color you want, and then open up the iFruit app on your real-life phone, and then simply change back to stock rims. And if you do that successfully, as you can see what I've done here, I made it yellow just so it was way easier to see in the video. That really adds a huge pop of color instead of the standard alloy rims. So you can see how menacing this looks with the yellow of the glow-in-the-dark rim background, and then the yellow rims themselves obviously look amazingly cool on this car, sort of a nice accent and a nice pop of color. So you can change the stock rims. That's something I really do like about this vehicle. Another thing I like about this vehicle are the headlights. Not only are they menacing looking, but they also work. So you have your standard lights here, which are kind of like those Nike checks. And then if you turn the brights on, you sort of get those like rectangle, triangle cubes in the center of it. I don't really know what to call them, but it looks really cool. And they're also incredibly bright as well. That's something I didn't even consider when I first got into this car, but the secondary lights or the high beams are very, very bright. So that's actually cool that those lights actually work. The next thing that's interesting about this car, you can only open up the passenger and driver doors. Nothing about this car opens up. There are also gull wing style doors, which is seen on the Sterling GT. The interior is not as modern as I thought it would be, especially for a car like this. But one thing I do like is the steering wheel doesn't block any of the dials or gauges. Looks like Rockstar's been listening to at least some of my complaints because I always thought that was incredibly frustrating. Now you can see all the dials and the switches and stuff like that without having to duck down. So anyways, that right there is the brand new Pegassi Tezeract, the latest supercar to be added to Grand Theft Auto Online. And that right there is 20 things you might not have known about this vehicle that you probably should before you end up deciding to purchase this crazy car. I think this vehicle is amazing. It has some of the wackiest and coolest customization. It's also fully electric, which is pretty unique for a supercar. I think there's only a handful of other vehicles like that in the game. And it just has some crazy customization, design elements. Obviously, we've never seen a car with rims like that before. That's just incredibly unique. So I really like this vehicle. I think the price tag is going to be a little bit off-putting for people, and it should, because at the end of the day, you know, once you're done customizing it, you're going to be over $3 million invested into this car. So that's a lot of money to consider. So if you want a really quick, really enjoyable, super unique, very customizable hypercar, then this vehicle is definitely for you. The only thing I would kind of be worried about here is that price, but if you do have the funds to end up purchasing it, then I definitely see no reason why you shouldn't. And again, that's a great reminder. I've got a shark card giveaway going on my Twitter account. So who knows, at the end of this week, you might be walking away $3.5 million richer and don't even have to worry about paying for this vehicle. But anyways, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. What do you think of this car? Do you enjoy it, or are you going to be staying away from it? I'd love to hear from you guys down there. If you did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new. We like daily GTA 5 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.